we are on a right direction. As India, we are on a right direction. There's no question that we are adopting RE. Pace could be debated whether it could be that fast, practically possible, can be discussed and debated. But as I'm saying that all forms of energy need to be harnessed well. And we need to put our bets right in terms of what we need to adopt. For example, if we are keen on storage, initial support will be required. Hydrogen will require the support. But yes, to answer your point, the way finally the outcome has been, or people say the deadlock, it has been clear that developing countries are saying that some of the key things need to be done by the developed countries, which you're saying. So that is the stance which remains, which I think is a fair stance if you ask me as an individual. As I said, the emissions are higher on that side, and we are also there not to emit more going forward. So somewhere the balance has to be there. What would be the key opportunities and challenges for GCC country which are heavily dependent on hydrocarbon for economic prosperity?
While our members are joining in. So very happy to see the fraternity join in. Welcome to the Blue Circle. It's such a big privilege and pleasure to connect with everyone and our distinguished keynote speaker, who is handpicked because of the think input and the rich experience he brings in. Thank you also to our distinguished audience for joining us, most of whom are CEOs, CXOs, and senior leaders. Many of them are our members and are repeat visitors to our webinars. This is very encouraging and motivates us to provide even higher level of dialogue through the online mode as well. For those of you who are new with us today, Blue Circle is the world's first sector-specific networking app for business leaders that's built in India. We currently focus on 20 sector communities such as e-mobility, energy, real estate, healthcare, logistics, aerospace and defense, and many more. We also present socioeconomic insights which ultimately determine the evolving complexion of the market. Along with our weekly webinar series and our digital publication, you will be happy to know that we have recently launched the first version of the Blue Circle app for leaders, somewhat like the sector-specific LinkedIn for senior leaders, a space to have meaningful conversations, connect with over 5,000 plus like-minded leaders from India and across the globe, house high-quality curated content, and access business opportunities across these sectors. Those leaders among you who are interested, please do join us. I will share the link to the app in the chat section and will soon be sending invitations to our new guests post today's discussion. Now, without further ado, I'm pleased to introduce today's keynote speaker and Blue Circle member, Mr. Vivek Sharma, Senior Director, CRISIL Infrastructure Advisory. He is an energy expert and has 20 years of consulting experience in power sector reforms, conventional energy, renewable energy, and natural resources such as coal and oil and gas. He works closely with the central and state governments on reforms, restructuring, regulations, policies, and programs, and has carried out several project appraisals. And finally, today's topic, which is a very timely one, role of new energies for meeting COP commitments. Now I request Mr. Sharma to please begin the session, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gautam, and warm welcome to all the participants. It's a pleasure to be back on Blue Circle. This topic, I think, last 20 days has been making headlines while the Glasgow discussions were going on, and a lot of questions and a lot of debate is around. And I thought it's good to pick up the topic and share our perspective, because we have been closely tracking this for now over 2 decades. How things are shaping up, and what I've done, I've put up a small presentation, and I'll be happy to take questions post that. But essentially, just before I start, just to tell you, I'm more than, as Gautam introduced, I have more than 20 years experience on the energy side. Have been looking at entire value chain from fossil fuel side to renewable side, the transition, to the buyer side, which is your discoms, to the gas side, and of course on the upstream side. So fairly long career in terms of getting into energy sector and looking at this transition. So can you see can everybody can see the presentation, Gautam?
Yes, Mr. Sharma.
Yeah. Okay, I'll move ahead. So essentially what I'll cover, I'll first set the tone in terms of, there are still, from the fact side, I thought I'll just put certain facts on table because there are certain numbers doing rounds, but there is slight deep dive which we did and thought those facts to be bring on table. One, whether it's a real issue, the climate thing, that's one. I have put a slide there. Second, lot of work was happening. It's not that it's last 20 days we've been discussing, but a lot of earlier commitments, NDCs were done. So just a quick flavor, and then of course I'll deep down to Panch Amrit, which the PM announced during this Glasgow event. And then I'll go to, those 5 action plan, and then what are the critical new energy which we have to look at if we are seriously looking at meeting COP commitments. Now, one can debate, and I think I'll have leave some time for that. How does 2030 target looks like, and how the 2070, which is ambitious one, looks like, and whether that is enough from a country's perspective. I'll spend a little time on that. Let me just start by giving some of the numbers, to give the context to the entire discussion and my argument based on that. So this is just a preliminary slide in terms of, yes, the issue is real. There are a lot of now assessments and studies have been carried out by IPCC and other reports. Fact is that the temperature, whether it is surface temperature or sea levels, there's a clear, you can see there is a rise over the years, and this is something recorded. And temperature, for example, global, if you see the left side, lower graph, the climate, global temperature over the years has increased by 1 degree or so, surface temperature. CO2 emissions has increased to 460 ppm in last couple of decades. Similarly, your Arctic sea ice content, it has gone down. So I think there's a lot of variation. Besides that, there's a lot of volatility which is due to change in climate. Last, of course, the sea height variation, the sea that also has gone up, rate of change if you see in last 2 decades. It's all recorded statement. So limited point here that it's quite real. It's not that this is unreal. This is something we are talking in the air. And there are certain pointers which I mentioned below. Over the 2 centuries, CO temperature rose by 48%. Pre-industrial era, which is 1850. Obviously, industrial revolution was required, but everything comes with some cost or other. Similarly, 19 of the 20 warmest years have occurred since 2000. That also is recorded. Globally, 8 out of world 10 largest cities are near coast. So which rise, which do leads to some kind of threat of infrastructure around those sea coasts. More factual slide to set the context. Second, I think the factual one many have been discussing, and I do usually say this, and it's something which I can see even in our final discussion at the concluding session. We did make the point that the developed countries has to do some heavy lifting, then leaving it to the developing countries, and that's the point here get buttressed by the fact that even though we are committing and going ahead with very ambitious target, but the fact is South Asia accounts for close to 9% of the global CO2 emission. Within that, of course, India is a bigger pie. If you see the major 2 contributor of CO emission is US, followed by China. And plus minus here, maybe China first time, and at the time US, there's some debate there. But they are the key contributor in terms of CO2 emissions. Now, if I look at from the sector side, within that, which are those sectors, which are the key contributor, many people do debate and are not aware of the facts. And here, even in Delhi, when you talk of NCR pollution, there is some number or other numbers comes out. But clearly, the major contributor is energy, and within energy, you can segregate that into energy for in industry uses, and therefore the application or the solution will also have to be different for industry when we talk of energy. Energy in buildings is one of the contributor. Transport itself is again one of the key contributor. So this is more of a pie in terms of showing different greenhouse gas emission by sectors. Thought this is relevant to to debate and discuss. So it's clearly energy production and use accounts for 73% of the overall GHG emissions. Whereas there are others like agriculture, forest, which also comes and contribute to the other set of numbers. Again, a factual thing. I think the key point here is that one, the percentage we are contributing, and second, of course, the fact within the sectors which energy is the one which is the key in terms of the contributor. If I go to my next part, I will not spend time with it, rather I'll deep dive into the India story, which is more recent now. This is slightly, I would say, before the Glasgow thing. This part, if you look at, I thought I'll just put the South Asian countries where we stand. Of course, I will not discuss another separate slide on India, but most of the countries in South Asia did have shown some NDC, which I say national determined contribution, which they have asked for. They said, one way or other, and majorly their way or means is the RE. Like Bangladesh is saying 10% of total generation will come from RE. Maldives is also saying the same thing. Nepal is talking about around 15% of total energy. India, of course, is ambition target. I'll update this when I go to the next slide. Similarly, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, all are thrusting on RE to reduce some of the emissions. So all these efforts are more incremental in nature. Nobody is saying, I've said till now, to close down some of the existing fossil fuel, I think, which was a burning issue this time, which was debated quite well. But it is more that what is new or incremental you bring on table, and that has to come from where. From that account, when you talk of zero emission, net zero, zero going forward versus net zero is a point of debate which lasted quite a bit. So just to put this now, and before I get into more detail of it, and as usual, the government comes out with acronyms, and this time also, so Panch Amrit, which they call, is the commitment they shown. Clearly very significant in nature. One can debate, and I'll also discuss while talking about these numbers, how ambitious, how realistic, or what all need to be done to achieve that. So first, I would like to congratulate, at least we have put up a ambitious target to do it. So one first is on the 500 gigawatt non-fossil. So there is a qualification, it's called non-fossil, which RK Minister also clarified. When they say non-fossil, which means that nuclear get added in the RA, which otherwise is normally not added, but it is non-fossil in terms of emission, it has got added. So existing capacities, we are close to 156 gigawatt. What we want or tall task is next 9 years, we have to do 344 gigawatt. Of course, one can debate that the best till now has been 12 to 14 gigawatt. So we are here talking of run rate of around 35, 36 gigawatt in a year. So ambitious, doable, but will require some degree of more granular thought that, whether the demand side also, besides the supply side, is supporting this number. When I say demand side, is more to do with the fact that in last decade, plus minus with peaks and troughs, we have grown at 4.5% of energy growth demand. So demand commensurate absorbing this 344 gigawatt with the supply on land and transmission, how it it gets integrated is a key point. And I always say that whenever you put up a target, you have to have a very, very integrated approach, which helps to actually achieve those numbers. So certainly DISCOM strengthening transmission is the key, because ultimately they are going to be the buyer, and policy certainty is required. I think I did made this point recently in one of a forum that we need to avoid discussing or debating of on like reopening of PP or renegotiation, which recently has been discussed for Punjab case. So I think some consistency is certainly required. Today it can happen here, today it can happen to some other sectors. So that consistency is required. Second, I think more in terms of if I convert gigawatt to energy terms, it's more stringent target. It says 50% of energy needs, its mammoth target is to be met through RE sources. And if I look at that from the existing, which is 25% non-fossil, again, nuclear is included here, we have to have another 25%. So if you ask me from number comparison, we should actually have to go maybe close to 400 gigawatt additional to have converted energy in this. You can do, some calculation, what will be the contribution nuclear, RE or hydro, but plus minus, this will be a difficult task to achieve. But yes, we If we slip from here to so here and there, that's fine. But idea is to have this consistent pitch and consistent policy framework towards adopting RE as we move along, especially for all your incremental demand, and forming this up along with the right integrated policy, which includes storage as an option. I do see the success of RE going forward being infirm will only lie with hybrid, whether it could be storage or whether it could be storage in the form of hydro, or even gas, how it is going to play a role. We have been saying gas as at least 2 decades ago, when the RE storage story was not there, the gas always played a role for intermediate and peak demand, with the capacity of ramping up, ramp down. But I think somewhere down the line, all these options need to be again relooked to have more firm sources of energy, which is by 24/7 and does not impact the grid beyond a point, to avoid certain kind of curtailment risk or any kind of risk around it. Most importantly, all your first two points need to have acceptability on ground from the consumer, which is your counterparties DISCOM, their financial health, and the consumer itself. They need a round-the-clock power. So all this thing has to package and bundle in a way that it provides solution to the problem overall. Yeah. Third, again, this 1 billion ton, they're saying that to reduce CO2 emission between the next 10 years. Existing, if I say, So existing, of course, there is a non-fossil capacity, which 300 metric ton, which can be avoided around 330 MT. But the key point here is that if I take purely the RE addition, which we have talked about, this will help us to reduce 500 million ton of CO2 emission, which the first 2 points can achieve if they achieve that. The rest, I think, is more on the other industry side and other side which we do focus with. The 4 and 5 point, I do call it slightly more, will require more extensive analysis in terms of cost also. So key point on the third side is on the intensity, carbon intensity, and that I would say more link it to the industry, how they consume the consume energy. Clearly, industry specific solution is more on the hydrogen side or CUS side. They need to shift, and for this I always say that some heavy lifting, and there's something government also articulated, that the cost of this has to be borne by the developed countries. So what is expected out of developed countries, therefore, is the certain degree of international finance or soft loan or soft grants coming to us to have this actually implemented. Otherwise, we have to look at closely how the cost curve moves. Whether it is in this decade, we'll see a cost reduction, which we are all aiming for. But better it is that we have an early thing, provided that there is a international community support. There is a fund which is there. It's still a debate how much India is able to access that fund. Fourth one, fifth, I'll say is ambition. I'll not spend much time on that in terms of its achievement, but directionally it says that we will be a net zero, which means that by the time fossil fuel based generation will get phased out and new ones all get formed up with storage and other option, and hydrogen playing a coming in play significantly, besides the other component which is on the forestation side or green building side. Far-fetched, but something I think good to put at. Again, the timeline is we're talking of a 50 years for this, can be doable. Now, before I go, I think I'll just put this in the perspective of the previous slide. If I look at the technology readiness, first two, I think this forum knows we have debated. We have done quite well on that, I would say, on the solar side or wind side. Wind, in fact, was a good story. We initially, with solar coming and overtaking a bit, it has slightly dampened, but I would say still wind and solar are one of the good story for India to look at. And technology is quite advanced. It's something which I would say Make in India has happened there, at least on the wind side. Solar side, we need to look at how it is. But other options, I would say that especially, and I will spend later on the time on energy storage, biofuel and green hydrogen, especially. If you look at the green hydrogen row, you will see the impact potential is on all sectors. So, green hydrogen could be for industrial processes, which is a major game changer. It could be for transport through green cells, green hydrogen cells, and of course in the energy side. All our transition in between, for example, electric vehicle, we do talk about electric vehicle moving from electricity, but one will debate that ideally the electric charging also, they are discussing that it should be come from the green sources. So ultimately, yes, transport is one of the others EV which can drive that. Storage side, I think a lot to be done. We are all closely watching the cost side there, but this is going to be an important component to actually have first two successful ahead also, because solar wind without storage beyond a point will not get accepted to the grid so easily unless you take gas or some other sources. So these three, I think I'll have some more discussion around it as we move along. But the technology readiness side, I think that pointer talks about on the right, it is more ready, and other on the left, there is still cost and R&D is required to be done. I have a final slide which will summarize this, but I thought I'll just quickly touch on this. On the energy side, I have been saying that, and it's based on the experience of past, all the target setting, we need to have integrated target and integrated planning. I think it's good to call that out, that we have a RPO target, we have this much coming from solar or wind. But I think time has come to have an integrated planning around it, that this much has to come from storage. If there is a cost, beat that cost, be accepted. You can't get away with that, unless what will happen that you've seen in some of the cases, I'm sure in the forum people know, even though the SECI bids were there, the PPA signing took time, PTC PPA signing took time, states have some reluctance to take over beyond a point only RE. So hybrid is the go way ahead, and for that you need a very closer integrated planning, including the transmission, which is required to pump that out in the system. Rest, I think the second key point I would say that contract structures has to be, sanctity of contracts need to be maintained. This is something which we are seeing right now. It's not a good thing to have. This can potentially kill the investment story. I think I do expect that the central government may come up with that as we move along, some kind of a point around it, or maybe I'm sure if the courts have to decide in terms of sanctity of contract, it's obvious, but it just takes unnecessary time and what you call anxiety around the investors community. Industrial process, again, we have energy efficiency trading scheme, but I think we need to do more there. And there, I think the subsidy part of that part is clearly required. Building side also, we need to have building energy standards. We need to have more subventions on the interest side, longer debt tenure side, or moratorium around, so that this could be adopted faster. On transport also, I think there's a lot done by the government. I was talking in one of the forum on EV charging side, but still the anxiety around the charging station being available, or for that matter, the initial cost. There's a lot of, in fact, capacity building education is required around making EV understanding to consumers. On the long run, it is still beneficial, but I don't think so it has been really talked or discussed in that way. So clearly performance link in manufacturing has been announced. Let's see how it gets implemented. There is still, I would say, cost competitiveness. The other part which is important is having a chicken and egg situation. What will come first, a charging station or the vehicle first? So both has to go hand in hand. Maybe we were saying that initially the captive audience has to play a role with them along with the charging station. Maybe that could be one transition which we'll see in the EV adoption, faster EV adoption. Otherwise, it will go in their own pace or manner. To me, this is my last slide, but I think these are the 4 key things for new energies in terms of the key thing which we can do in India. We need to have, this hydrogen policy to be finalized along with roadmap. We need to set up targets for electrolyzers capacity. One argument is let's pay the premium for green hydrogen through feed-in tariff initially. That is, I think, the biggest game changer for industry, because industry processes will be energy extensive unless until we really come up with good amount of investment on green hydrogen and adoption of same in industries. There is a lot of interest globally right now. Everybody is working on whether it is green, blue, hydrogen, to look at how to de-risk initial development through private sector investment and private sector participation. Government loans, grants will be critical. I think VGF has been success in RE. It could be adopted here. Hydrogen transition fund could be one option. And again, I'm saying from international community, which has been talking, can take a lead there in terms of creation of some fund, which is longer tenure and takes care of some of the counterparty risk. One point I will flag here that I would like that I said that contract sanctity is to be maintained. You will see in hydrogen also initial cost will be high. As we say, economies will bring down the cost. So the sanctity of contract who signed today, whatever the structure, need to be maintained. Even though tomorrow, 10 years ago, the cost comes down. So that should not be the case. And one there, I think the government stance or the act, maybe through the form of act, has to be very clear that whatever is done or committed will be enforced till the end of the contract, even though the future cost curves are down. Similarly, in electric vehicle, I think the same thing. I would say that there is a lot of work done, as I mentioned, but waiver of taxes, priority of free permits, charging also can be reduced cost, grant or low interest incentive. One of the things, we are doing a study with NITI and ADB. We were surprised to see that interest costs are high vis-a-vis ICE vehicles, and largely because of the fact that there is NBFC also are not aware of this technology, and they are worried on certain, the same thing that here it is battery, what is the life of the battery and whether they will be able to recover the cost. So I think that part need to be tightened a bit, but clearly there is an initial subvention could be helpful here in this sector. Battery storage, the scheme is out, and I see a lot of interest happening in the market. So this something will go a long way for India, and as I said, will become a support system for RE to be adopted. Research we need to do, I think, continues doing it also in the battery chemistry, battery recycling, and second use market. These are the things which we need to look at as we move along. But in all, again, I'm repeating that we need to invest in that. We need to incentivize direct investment with a very consistent contract, robust contracts in play. That will be critical. Last, on the biofuel side, whether the ethanol blending, there are programs going on. There is also the clear thing that you need to give financial support, a grant, a provincial loan for early commercial scale. Ministry of Petroleum is quite this is on their radar as a top priority to advance on biofuels, CBM. I think this is something we need to look at with or innovative structure of contract for difference to provide price floor, etc. So that's it from my side, and I'll happy to take question. I think I was exceeded the time, but I'll be happy to take questions from the audience. There are a few questions which were already there before the session. Gautam, how should we proceed? Should I take up first that, or there's some new questions there?
So I think currently there's one question who is there from Mr. Pulkit Goyal. So if you want to highlight that.
I think Pulkit, yes, I did not, this was not specifically called out, but geothermal again is one thing which need to look at. Again, Pulkit, the point here is there is initial support required in terms of acceptability of the cost, which will come along with it. And there are certain overall implementation challenges which could be there, which need to be addressed when the geothermal energy is looked at. In fact, we have done one study on this, and we also feel that technology-wise is proven, but the other safeguards and other things which need to be adopted, it will come with a cost, and all these things under the day is the cost vis-a-vis the economics, and the economics need to work ultimately, or there has to be, as I said, I'm very clear we need to have certain support system coming in play in terms of VGF or other other subvention which the government can provide. I can't, just a second. I'm trying to open this a bit. The chat box, do I need to look at?
No. I'm looking at that. I think there's one gentleman who was just asked for the presentation. I'll connect back with you post that. Would you like to take the questions which had come previously, Mr. Sharma?
Sure, I'll just open that up.
Yeah.
So there are a few interesting questions have come, and the first question itself is something which I think I discussed. It come from Darshan Shukla. He says, "What will be the new equilibrium for power generation based on source?" Tough question, and that's why I'm articulated that we need to have an integrated planning around it. The equilibrium, as I say, can be formed by looking at all sources. When RE was adopted and we were flagging this out that we need to have a support system to get this equilibrium, when is the word you use, acceptability in the grid side. Similarly, there has to be some integrated approach on all sources, how we best utilize. Fact is, whatever we say, maybe not new investments will coming on the coal side or lesser will be coming, but coal will remain as a base load. And now therefore they said at least nuclear they were included because there will be some geopolitical reasons also to include that. But all sources have a role to play. And especially when you talk of energy security, I think as a country, we need to have all our sources optimized, which is a very optimum solution to the end of the day to the consumer per se. So I think it has to be balanced out with all sources coming to play. New equilibrium, I don't know whether the 50% which has been announced by 2030 by Government of India, that 50% coming from non-fossil could be a new equilibrium, provided that 50% includes storage and other ancillary components to have that equilibrium in play. Otherwise, only 50% coming from purely from RE, I think that won't be equilibrium. That won't get accepted in the grid. So therefore, they've called it out as a storage, hydro, and other solutions to have that equilibrium balance. So there are a lot of challenges. The second question is come from Suzlon Prashant. He's saying there are a lot of challenges in COP26 outlook. Yes, there are. How to balance mix of new energy versus carbon energy in developing and large populated countries in India? Is 2000 not too far? So good question, Prashant. If you see in my first slide, second slide, I did mention that we can't go away with the fact that we are 8 to 9%, and if India is 7 to 8% of the contributor, and the fact is we are still developing and we need certain sources of energy. We can't do a shift overnight, and some heavy lifting has to be done by the developed countries. If they want us to adopt some of the things faster, obviously it comes with cost, whether it's geothermal or other forms which is just discussed. So balance will be there. Again, I'm saying we are on a right direction. As India, we are on a right direction. There's no question that we are adopting RE. Pace could be debated whether it could be that fast. Practically possible, can be discussed and debated. But as I'm saying that all forms of energy need to be harnessed well, and we need to put our bets right in terms of what we need to adopt. For example, if we are keen on storage, initial support will be required. Hydrogen will require the support. But yes, to answer your point, the way finally the outcome has been, or people say the deadlock, it has been clear that developing countries are saying that some of the key things need to be done by the developed countries, which you're saying. So that is the stance which remains, which I think is a fair stance if you ask me as an individual. As I said, the emissions are higher on that side, and we are also there not to emit more going forward. So somewhere the balance has to be there. What would be the key opportunities and challenges for GCC country which are heavily dependent on hydrocarbon for economic prosperity? So I think it's again the fair question, as I said, that we need to look at which stage they are on economic prosperity. Fact is that few countries do have dependent on hydrocarbons, but most of the countries where we have studied, somewhere they will be able to adopt RE. That's why I mentioned as a flavor I gave some of the Southeast Asian country. So RE will get adopted. transport can play a good role. But it's very specific to country. I won't be having a straight answer. But I do agree with one point. If it is a poor or a underdeveloped country, they might have dependency initially on the hydrocarbon side. So I think the Raghunatha has asked a question: why can't we stop ban fossil fuel consumption that is damaging the very survival? Economies will survive adapting easily to innovate alternatively. Time to take the bold step. So I think intuitively, yeah, you can say that, but fact is then we need to have very clearly an alternate in place. So it can't be either or, right? So therefore, there will be a transition. So that's why we call this transition as a thing. We can't do overnight, then we can't have blackouts entire country facing. There's still teething issue, as I was saying, to adopt completely the RE with the storage. If that start happening, we can think of not adding any more fossil fuel consumption. So these are the questions I received prior to the session. Any other question came?
Yes, so we've just received a few more questions as well. We've got one from Mr. Viswanathan Atulari. He's asking about the green hydrogen demand. And we need to have clear targets to replace gray, blue hydrogen to green hydrogen.
So, since I don't have an answer to it, there is a study which has been asked to be done. What is the overall demand? But there are preliminary numbers floating around, which I don't want to talk. The number gets registered. But there is the one way to look at it is that you have energy intensive industries. So that's a big chunk. So that much demand is clearly there. And that demand, when we're discussing this hydrogen policy, that was discussed. So there is some numbers being mentioned there also, that what is the demand. But yes, I think there is more granular work is required there. If you ask me one more point, which is quite interesting, we have not seen that in the past, but now you will see as we move ahead. In Kirat Parikh report in say 2 decades ago and earlier also, in the integrated policy, we used to say that elasticity of demand is not working on the power energy side, which might not be correct going forward. I think you are seeing elasticity of demand have an impact. So therefore, the cost curves will become important. Today, there was a sudden adoption for a couple of ways of RE because the cost was lower. It became auto adoption. But then it reached to a stage when they included the cost of grid. So the moment you included the cost of grid, then again they looked at the overall thing, like they have to pay the fixed charge for coal base. So they have one cost or other cost sitting on the books. So elasticity of demand even for hydrogen will be there. So the demand which you are saying, there can't be a straight answer to it. One need to look at the economics of it. Demand unrestricted could be at any cost, any price. Then it could be huge. But at what price is the question, and therefore I'm saying the entire materially how we put across the policy in terms of what VGF, what incentives initially will be critical. And as we move along, like the way it has happened in solar, the economies or when the economies will play, the cost curve will come down, maybe adoption will go up or the demand will go up. So that's the way I'll try to answer this question. Yeah.
Correct. No, very rightly said also. So there's another question from Apurva Appan. Wants to ask, do you think that the CCUS technology readiness is at least 10 years away for it to have any meaningful impact on the 2030 1.5 degree scenario?
So I think I did mention in my slide, if you see in terms of the acceptability, the technology thing, it was slightly better than the even storage. That's what I depicted, because we were trying to see where it stands. We have not seen storage right now on ground that scale. So this could be there. The challenge there is that there is a cost to it. So the cost point of view, it is a challenge. But yes, I would say it is the timeline wise, I would say it's still at this decade, we have to see how best it can come on rolls at the right price. But impact wise, it has on power generation, it has on industrial facilities, it has, or directly from the atmosphere, you can capture that. It's a pretty innovative. It's basically what it does is captures and transports the CO2. So that cost of that taking into steel is there. So, that is something which again need to be looked at in terms of the elasticity and its acceptability.
Rightly
Good
said.
question. Yeah.
So just one more question, and I think that's the end of it. The question is there an analysis on end-to-end savings of CO2 by solar and wind power plants?
No, to answer your point, there is no analysis. But sorry, who has asked this question? What's his name?
It's an anonymous attendee. So
okay, anonymous. So I think there, if I go to my slide, if I have to put a number, it's difficult. But there was some mention that this much reduction can happen through RE. But RE alone going forward is not getting discussed. That's what I will again put a flag. It has to come with a hybrid solution. Maybe you will have few more rounds of Saki beds, 1000-2, but most of them has to have with a round-the-clock solution. So that certainly will have an impact, as we mentioned, that if we are able to adopt both 50% of the energy coming from non-fossil, which includes storage, you will have 0.5 to 1 billion ton of reduction vis-a-vis 1 BT commitment. So it's a pretty good number. Half of it you achieve. It's, I would say, a overstressed target. Yeah.
Great to hear that. So thank you very much, Mr. Sharma. I do have a few members who are requesting for your presentation. So I will reconnect with you, and if it's possible for you to share, I'll definitely take it forward with that.
Sure. Thanks, everybody, for joining. It was my pleasure to speak on this topic.
Thank you very much.